Guys, I have had the Galaxy Z Fold line of devices on my mind quite a bit lately, and it's because I actually think that the Z Fold 7 is going to be extremely good. And with those thoughts in my mind, I thought it might be smart, cool, interesting, whatever, to put my sim back into my trusty Galaxy Z Fold 6 and give you guys an updated review. It's been about 9 months since this device came out, and quite a bit has changed with some big software updates. And I think that reviewing this thing now as it is going to give us a really, really solid look, a sneak peek, if you will, at what the Z Fold 7 might end up being like. So, with that being said, let's get into the review. So as soon as I start using this device again, a handful of things become immediately clear to me. The first one is probably just that even though we are getting closer to a normal screen aspect ratio on this cover display, I still just prefer a normal screen aspect ratio. It is a little bit more narrow than I would want it to be, but good news is it does actually make it very, very easy to hold in one hand and quite easy to swipe type on. When you open the thing up, it is also just a little bit more narrow than I would want the thing to be, especially coming from devices like the Oppo Find N5 or the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, which are quite a bit wider. I'll drag my Oppo Find N5 over here to give a little bit of that comparison for you. You can see just how much wider, how much larger that Oppo Find N5 screen is. And if we close them, again, the same thing is true. This is just offering a more typical phone-like experience. Now, another thing that I immediately noticed, which is a good thing in comparison to devices like the Oppo Find N5, is the speaker performance. It is much louder than Oppo's device, much more sort of basic, much fuller sound, and that is very much appreciated. The screens are also very, very bright. I've shown you this in various different comparisons, but outside with the sun beating down, this cover display and this inner display are absolutely brighter than the OnePlus Open, the Find N5, or the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. It's a very sunny day out right now, and I was outside using this thing with no trouble at all. So while I don't love the aspect ratio of these screens, they are fantastic screens, in particular with regard to that brightness, and you pair them with a really nice set of speakers, which, yes, they are both on the left-hand side of the device, and I don't know why they choose to do that, but nonetheless, it's a pretty darn solid setup. Yes, it is definitely a little bit chonkier than some of the other foldables on the market. This is it compared once again to that Oppo Find N5, and there is a pretty substantial difference here between the two. How much that bothers you is going to be something that is subjective. I think almost because of how narrow it is, it doesn't bother me as much, or as much as I maybe thought that it was going to going back and forth, but it is definitely something to point out. This device just sort of feels nicer in the hand because of how sleek it is. I will say that my hinge continues to feel pretty darn rock solid, actually. Once you get to about right here, it kind of wants to flip the rest of the way open, and I think that that feels quite nice. The crease is what the crease is. It's kind of settled down into this appearance, which is definitely not as good as some other devices, but when you're looking straight on this device, it's absolutely fine. So overall, I think that the hardware of the Z Fold 6 is very, very solid, and it's one of the things that actually makes me most excited for the Z Fold 7, because it does seem like we're going to be getting that slightly wider, larger device, and if Samsung can deliver that with this kind of hardware polish, I think that we're going to be getting something really, really special. And when we start talking about the software experience, honestly, things are pretty darn solid as well. In particular, now that we are running One UI 7, there's just so much here to like. First off, let me just go back to this always on display, which I really like the look of. The fact that you can have your wallpaper sort of showing through there. I'm a big, big fan of that. Lots of new really cool things with One UI 7. And I know, guys, I know I've hyped and hyped and hyped big folders, and then I show you the device as I'm using it again for this review, and lo and behold, I'm not actually using any big folders, and the reason is because with this device, when you do your multitasking, you have to swipe up to get your little taskbar, and it actually ends up being the case that for me, that means having all my folders down here just makes a lot more sense, because all the apps that I want to use are right down here, and that makes it much easier to get into another second or third application, but nonetheless, it is there as an option. And let's talk about this really quickly. They did update this a little bit where you do now have this transient taskbar. You can get into your app drawer that way or just drag an app up off of that taskbar. And I think that that looks very good. If you want to use the old style that stays put, you can do that in the settings, but that is also new. And they've also added the Now bar, which not only appears on your lock screen, as you can see down here on the always on display. That's actually slightly off center, which is a little bit strange. Maybe that's a bug or something like that. Let's unlock it and not look at that horror show. But if we're playing music, we can actually see this little pill up here. And if we click on it, we get this pop-up that we can use to control our music, and that's going to work with a lot of different things like timers, stopwatches, basically any application that has an ongoing task. What's cool or kind of strange is that on the S25 series of devices, you don't have this with music, apparently, at least not that I can recall, but it is here on the Z Fold 6, and I like that quite a bit. Something else that I like is over here in the sidebar. It's basically a clone of Pixel Studio. It's called Drawing Assist, and actually I was already playing with this early on, so let's go ahead and start over. You can either draw, you can type, or you can use an image as reference to generate another image. So let me show you how this works. Let me go ahead and go into my images, and we're going to pick this flower, and then we're going to click on the text, and we're going to say use an anime style, and we're going to click on generate, and it's going to use the image I gave it as a reference point, plus the style I told it to use. This is maybe more of a watercolor style, but I think that's actually because I've clicked on watercolor down there. And it's going to try to generate an image. So it's like Pixel Studio. It's a little bit restricted in that you don't have as many different styles to choose between, but you do have the ability to use an image, text, or your own drawings as a reference point. And this is pretty cool. I use stuff like this all the time, in particular for making wallpapers. And of course, even though I literally never use it, I do have to mention that the S Pen is a thing. And for some people, this is such an important feature that they kind of have to go with the Z Fold line of devices. So again, I do have to mention it. And look, some of the newer features that they've added, things like AI Select. Yeah, you can do it with just using your finger, but they really make a lot of sense with the S Pen. I'll give you an example here. We're on an article on ShaneCraig.tech. We'll slide this out. We'll do AI Select. And what can you do with this? It's basically circle to search, but kind of with an AI twist to it. You can see it's automatically identified this image that is on the screen, and you can use Generative Edit or Drawing Assist with that image straight away. You can download it, copy it, pin it, crop it. You can do all sorts of really interesting things that can help you share or modify this image. And again, that's just sort of automatically happening. You can also circle some text down here and it's going to highlight it, and same thing, you can share it, copy it, pin it, or you can trigger Writing Assist where you can then start using AI to modify that text. In case you don't know how the pinning thing works, watch this. If I click it, now it's just up there and I can go home and do whatever I want to do. Let's try jumping into an app. And now I'm in another app and I can grab this text and I can actually drag it into the text box. Well, in this instance, it's not letting me drag it in because it's actually an image, but you can at least reference that text that's right there. I can click on and I can actually sort of hide it away up in the corner and then re-expand it later. But this would basically just make referencing this text so much easier. And if I was in a different app, I could drag it into that box and send it off. Or I guess what I could have done is I could have used, I forgot about this option, I could have grabbed the text just like that and then copied and pasted it in. So again, so many different options that you can do with something like AI Select, and it feels right at home with the S Pen. And of course, the Galaxy Z Fold 6 remains an absolutely top-tier device when it comes to multitasking. What Samsung has done here might not be quite like my overall favorite multitasking setup. There are a few things that I just prefer about Boundless View or Open Canvas from OnePlus or Oppo, but man, is it consistent. It just works. My Oppo Find N5, there are some apps that just don't want to do these things. They don't want to split screen well. Sometimes some apps are a little bit crashy. You just don't really get that on a Z Fold device. Like I said, I do really like how you can kind of lay things out on those other devices, but man, this is just so consistent. I just never run into a scenario where I can't do what I want to do or where it fights me when I'm trying to do something. That's very, very impressive. Now, one place where I'm less impressed continues to be with the Samsung keyboard. I have tried so hard over the last few days to use this keyboard, and I just can't do it. A lot of this is just because I've spent the last decade basically using Gboard, and it knows how I type. It knows the words that I'm going to use, and this keyboard, I would probably have to devote months to getting into that same sort of area. I tend to swipe type, and it's wrong about 80% of the time. So that's definitely going to be on me, but it's frustrating. So I end up trying to thumb type, and that's definitely better, but it still is much less accurate for me than Gboard is. So what I end up doing a lot of the time is I use speech to text, and that does work pretty decently well. If you go into your settings, you can actually change it over to Google Typing. You've got your little microphone icon down here. And if I click on that, notice how the entire keyboard goes away and it is replaced with this Google Typing or Google Voice Typing layout that pops up instead. Now, one really great feature here is we have the little AI icon, and we can do spelling and grammar check, and it's going to correct most of the little errors and add punctuation. So that's what I do a lot of the time. I just voice type, and then I use the spelling and grammar correction using AI, and that does work decently well, but I can't always voice type, and when that is the situation, I do find myself just wanting to switch back to Gboard, but I do miss the proofreading thing, so I'm sort of torn between these two situations. Gboard is more accurate for me, but it doesn't have the proofreading function that Pixels have, so I don't really know what to do. I can't really find a good solution to this problem. I know that some people are going to say that it looks maybe a little bit too much like an iPhone. Some will say that it looks nothing like an iPhone. This is very subjective, but I will tell you, I quite like the way that One UI 7 looks. I like how the performance is on the Z Fold 6. It is very, very fast and very, very smooth. I know it's not the latest, greatest processor, but it is more than enough for most people's use. In terms of camera performance, I think that it's fine. Of course, it does have that 50 megapixel primary sensor, and in good lighting, or I would say even okay lighting, it does a pretty good job. When the lighting starts to come down a little bit, you are going to start to have those typical Samsung issues with motion blur. All of that is doubly true with the other two cameras, the 3x telephoto, which is definitely beginning to show its age. Guys, we need a 5x telephoto on these things, and we need a much better sensor as well. Low light, it starts to get pretty darn grainy. The ultra wide, again, yeah, in good lighting, looks really, really quite good, but it's not going to stand up super well in some more challenging situations. In portrait mode, I think it's actually pretty solid. I really do like the way that Samsung handles bokeh, and I think it does a pretty good job here. The only place it suffers is when you do use that 3x zoom lens for portraits, which you might do to get a better focal length. You are going to start to see a reduction in the overall detail because that sensor is just not that good. To put it succinctly, if you're using the primary sensor, I think you're largely going to be quite happy with it. With the other two sensors, as the lighting drops, man, do they just seem to drop off a cliff. If things are like at least okay, I think that you're going to be fine with them. You might have a little bit of grain, but nothing too crazy. As soon as that lighting drops below okay and into that sort of subpar or bad range, they might not even be worth using. Coming from the Oppo Find N5 or even the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, that is sort of the biggest thing that I've noticed. It's rude spam interrupting my filming. Battery life has been pretty darn rock solid for me. I'd say it's right in the range of the Pixel 9 Pro Fold. Maybe just a little bit better, but not much. It's hard to kind of say for sure. Things vary day to day, but it's perfectly solid. I get through the day just fine. I do wish it lasted a little bit longer. The Oppo Find N5 does last longer than either one of the phones I just mentioned, and of course it does charge wildly faster than either of those devices. So I do wish that this thing charged a bit faster and maybe lasted a bit longer, but like I said, it's absolutely fine. For my use, which is not going to be the same as your use, I get around 5 or 6 hours of screen on time, and that's perfectly acceptable for me. All in all, I think that this is a really exceptionally good folding phone, even 9 months later. That really shouldn't be a big shock to you because I liked it quite a bit when I checked in with it last time. And it's only, I think, really gotten better with the new software features and updates like One UI 7. And of course, guys, you could take that and say, hey, let me try to find one of these things used or on sale and have a really solid folding phone. I think that's not a terrible idea, but you can also look at this and say, imagine what I've just described to you with a better primary sensor, with a larger cover display, with a larger inner display, both of which are going to be wider, which is going to be a better fit for split screen multitasking, a new processor, a larger vapor chamber. That allegedly is what the Z Fold 7 is going to be. And that is why I am just so insanely excited about the Galaxy Z Fold 7, because this thing is really, really darn good. And I think the Fold 7 is going to be a significant step up towards the things that I want Folds to be. So guys, thanks for watching. If you want to help support the channel in a more direct way, consider clicking that join button down below. What you're going to get is early access to some content, like probably this video, and it's also going to help make me a little bit less dependent on ad revenue. Subscribe for more content like this, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.